Hi, this is Kathy Quinn with Floriani. Floriani is a division of R&K Distributing, and I want to welcome you to our progressive classroom for August 2022. We are going to create a canning mat. It's the time when vegetables are coming in, stuff is starting to harvest. And I do a lot of water bath canning, pressure canning, freeze drying, a lot of food storage items because I bring in all the stuff from the garden and I hate for it to go bad, feed it to chickens. You can only give so much away. When people start looking the other way, when you bring a bag of tomatoes to synagogue, you know you've given out too many. So I came up with a mat because I do can all the time. And sometimes when we can, we get a little confused. We can usually big one season out of the year. It's not like we normally can all year long. So sometimes the rules get a little fuzzy. So I wanted to create a mat because as we pressure can or water bath can, as we take those out of the canners, you need to set them on something on your surface because normally a lot of us have countertops that are granite and it's very cold, or you might have other types of countertops, but they're very cold when it's coming out of a canner. So you never set these hot jars directly on your counters or they're liable to crack. So I wanted a good sized mat. You know, I spend all my time putting down a towel, putting down some dish towels on top of it, and all this stuff to make sure it's nice and thick and it sits real nice. And I have space between each of the jars. So what we're going to do is we are going to purchase 2 dish towels. Now, I happened to purchase these 2 at Bed Bath & Beyond. I had one with a striped border, but a nice, solid, clear area that I could easily embroider on. And the second towel I'm going to use as a back. Now, remember, always check your dealer first. Please go to your dealer and see if they've got cup towels you can use. They don't have to be terry. They can be nice dish towels. I call them cup towels. I'm sorry, dish towels. So we're going to get those. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open that up, and you will notice in my little pictures on the side, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the center vertically and horizontally on the wrong side of my towel. Now I do mark the front as well because I'm going to need to make sure my needle centers, but in order to hoop this straight and easy in your hoop, if you mark it on the back, it makes your life much easier. Now I mark these with a Quilter's Select fabric marker. I love this thing. When we came out with it, I thought, oh, another one. You know, I have all these other markers, but I'm going to tell you, I love it. It's a nice dark line. Now, it doesn't work as well on really dark fabrics, obviously. It's a darker purple. But the nice thing is one end is the marker and the other end you can immediately erase anything. You don't have to do it immediately. You can do it at any time. But if your line goes a little crooked or it's not measured quite straight, you can pop that other end off and use the little eraser on it and go ahead and remove that line and remark it. So I have really enjoyed that feature of our Quilter Select marker. So now that I've marked them, the next thing I'm going to do is prepare my applique pieces. Now what I did is you've been through the software lessons, so you know about our mason jars. Now these jars are an applique. So what I did is I picked fabric that had foods. I'm doing apples, and I'm doing maybe I'll water bath can apples or fruits, and then I pressure can vegetables or stews. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Quilter's Select Apple Stick or my Floriani Applique Wonder. Now you're going to notice if you look in this picture right here with the package, I have printed the design on the back of the apple stick. Now, if you print it so you are going to cut it with scissors, remember you must mirror image your shape. Now, I'm going to cut it out on a digital cutter, so I don't need to mirror image my shape. But I wanted to show you that we can print it and cut it with scissors if you choose to do that rather than use a digital cutter. I am a happy, happy girl with digital cutting because it's perfect. Now you can tell I've taken my 2 pieces of fabric and I have ironed them to the Quilter Select Applistick or Floriani's Applique Wonder. Either one will work for this project. I've ironed it onto the back of the fabric. Now you can see in my picture, I have placed it on my cutting mat. So with it on my cutting mat, I'm going to put it in my digital cutter and I'm going to cut these out. Then I'm going to take my mat and never try to pull your fabrics and stuff off your mats. Roll your mat. It will pop off and easily come away. That's the easiest way to remove stuff from your mat. And you will see over here that there I've got my apples and over here I have some corn. So we've got those pieces cut out. Now I'm going to hoop Floriani Perfect Stick Tearaway. Remember, we have a tearaway and a cutaway. We want tearaway, and you can always easily spot the difference. Tearaways have green labels that say, go ahead and tear me away. Cutaways have a red label that says, stop, you're not going to need to cut me off. Now, in this case, it really wouldn't matter. If you don't have Perfect Stick Tearaway, but you have cutaway, nobody's ever going to see the back of this. But the tearaway will suffice. Now, what I have done is, you'll notice here, I have laid a ruler down, and you know what? My hoops have a little raised notch that I can kind of put that ruler against, and then I'm going to draw lines directly onto my stabilizer, X and Y lines. So I have hooped my stabilizer, I scored the protective paper, I used a T-pin because they're not too sharp, pulled the paper away and marked my X and Y lines. The reason we have marked our dish towels on the back is it makes it much easier to walk that line and hoop it perfectly straight on our stabilizer. We are not going to use a template for this one. I'm not using Floriani's template tearaway on this particular project because the design is so large, I'd be taping it together. It suffices to know I have it centered where I need it in that towel. Now, when I drew these lines, remember, we're going to stick it down onto this exposed tacky surface. So here you can see I have folded it in half and I've laid that right along that line, my horizontal line. Then you'll notice I'm walking it down. I'm matching the line on the back of my towel with the line drawn on my stabilizer, and then I am going to smooth it and press it into place. Now, I did mark the front because when I put this on the machine, if I'm off just a little hair, we all know we can adjust our needles right to left, up and down until it centers in my crosshair right here. So we can center it in my crosshair. Now we're going to place this back on the machine. Now we are not going to add our topper yet. The first thing we're going to do is stitch out our applique placement line. Now it is very important that when you turn your applique pieces over, whether you cut them on your digital cutter or you use scissors, to take a T-pin and score that paper and peel it center out. If you pick at the edges, you'll just rat up the edges of your applique fabric. Now I'm going to stick it down, placing it inside these lines. You can see I've placed it in the lines. Then I'm going to go ahead and stitch down the tack down stitch that's going to hold this in place. It's also then going to move to the other end. Remember, when we created this, we talked about it. It's going to move to the other end of the towel and do my other applique placement to put down. In this place, I put the corn. In the other one, I'll be putting my apples down. After we do those, then we can put our water-soluble topping on. Now, I actually realized the way I did it works, but I might have used my color keep topping. It's kind of like a catch-22. All this stitching I want topping with. So what I'm going to do is place my color keep topping over the top, and I'm using white because my label on my jar is white. Now these red apples are going to shadow through white thread. So I'm going to put my white color keep topping. Remember, color keep topping is to match the thread color. Now it's not exact. If you're going to do light pink, light yellow, light green, anything really light, you're going to use white. If you're doing a darker shade of yellow, maybe shades of green or something, you can use the yellow. You've got gray, pink, and black. Depending on your thread color, you are going to block out the color that would shadow through. So I'm going to place this down, and I am going to stitch out my label. Then I'm going to remove the color keep topping, and then it will go, that will finish this jar. Then we'll go finish our other jar. Same thing. You'll notice on both of these jars, I had used color keep topping, and it makes that design come out beautifully. Then I'm going to go ahead and stitch out the words we've put on it. Now, what I had you create, of course, these are your towels. You're going to create them however you like, but go through the lessons, the software lessons, to get a handle on how you would create a different design for your canning mat. But I chose to do both going different directions. I put canning mat if you're doing water or bath canning. Remember, fruits and tomatoes and any high acid food can be water bath canned. But pressure canning, you've got to make sure you check your altitude for how many pounds of pressure you need to set that canner to. You're going to use approved recipes. It's really important not to just go off every little video you see on the internet. I see all kinds of canning videos on YouTube. Pressure canning is, well, we're going to get a lesson on canning real quick. Water bath canning will heat the water to boiling. Okay, where I live, that's about 180 degrees. And so, because of my altitude and where the water boils, it's going to kill all molds and yeast that you get in fruits and fruits and tomatoes, because they have a very high acid content. So water bath canning them works perfect. You just got a big pot that's got boiling water. You've set your jars in. You've covered the top of them with water, and you have boiled them. Depending upon what fruit or tomatoes, whatever you're using, you may have had to add a little lemon juice, and you will look at approved times for your altitude. Altitude has everything to do with when the water boils and how hot it gets. Now, pressure canning is because vegetables, meats, stews, stuff like that does not have a lot of acid in them. Therefore, so you don't get botulism, you have to heat that up to 242 degrees. Well, if your water's boiling at 180 in your altitude, that's not going to cut it. You'll have the very good chance of sealing your jars and letting botulism grow. It must go to 242 degrees, and depending on your altitude, your weight's going to be 10 pounds of pressure, 15 pounds of pressure. I'm high, so I always have to use 15 pounds of pressure. And it will also give you a length of time. For instance, I did green beans the other day. I had to can them at 15 pounds of pressure for 25 minutes because I was doing pint jars. Now, I did a bunch of caldo de res because everything in that was approved for pressure canning, every vegetable, meat I used in it. But now that one had to be 15 pounds of pressure. I used quart jars, and they had to can for 90 minutes. So I put all the ingredients in there raw, put the top on, put it in my canner, set my pressure, cooked it for the 90 minutes. Of course, all the stew is now cooked and it is canned and it cannot get botulism growing. So that's why I did the mat with just a little reminder of what goes in what. Now, once you've done this, you're going to take it out, remove the topper. You can cut away from the back, but you don't have to be concerned with how much of the perfect stick you get away, just as long as it doesn't extend past the edges of your dish towel, you're fine. Now we're going to cut a piece of So Fab foam, and I use the beige because these are white cup towels. That's why I didn't use the black superstructure foam. Now I'm going to cut this an inch smaller all the way around from my dish towel. Set it aside. Now we're going to place the two dish towels wrong sides together, and we're going to pin three sides, long side, short side, long side, leaving one short end open. I used a small narrow zigzag to stitch that because I thought it gave it a little more stability. So I zigzagged around the three sides and I left that one open. Then I took it off the machine, stuffed it kind of like a pillowcase, put my foam in, straightened it out, flattened it out. Then I zigzagged the end close. Then I went and I pressed it. Now one side of this is fusible. I put the fusible side up. It really doesn't matter which side you put up. But I'm going to press it real good to fuse that other, whichever side down. Now, this is the perfect mat to sit down when you're canning. You can see I've got some apple pie filling. I have so many apples. They have babies at night. And I'm freeze drying them. I'm canning them. Oh my God. Applesauce, apple butter. But you can see this makes a nice mat to sit out. Remember, when you set your jars out, you need to have at least 2 fingers of space between each jar so the air can circulate well around them. You will let them cool down for 14 to 16 hours. Then you will remove the rings. You have rings on, not super tight, just to hold the little cap on until they're canned. Then you remove the rings. Do not store them with the rings on them because that's dangerous, and do not stack them, because if you stack them and one of these should come unsealed, but you've got something stacked on top of it, the weather may change in your pantry, it may get hot, it may reseal itself, and you'll never know there was anything bad in there. So do not stack them, because you can always check and see if they've got a good seal. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson on our canning mat. We will look forward to seeing you next month in September, where we're going to start going through doing some cool, different things for gifts for the holidays. Thank you for coming. I look forward to seeing you next month. Bye-bye.